Hi, my name's Carolia. I'm with Yoga Lunchbox, and I'm here today with Ben Ralston, who writes a blog called Grounded Spirituality. He's also a regular columnist on Elephant Journal. He's a Shivananda yoga teacher and has been for 10 years or so. And he's
Yeah,
awesome. And also now doing reference point therapy healing. So you've got a few things on the go there, Ben.
yeah. And I just had a kid, so that's the priority at the moment.
All right, I know all about that. And where are you based? You're obviously from England originally, but that's not where you're living, is it?
No, I live in Slovenia. I met a Slovene girl, and she put a spell on me, and I found myself here in Slovenia all of a sudden.
Aha. And for those of us who don't know, where is Slovenia?
Where?
Yeah, where?
Great,
I mean, I've got no
great.
idea geographically where that is. I can, you
I
know.
think, let's be honest, most people don't know where it is. I didn't know where it was. It's basically by Italy. It's sort of under Austria and to the right of Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
next, but it's Central Europe. It's not Eastern Europe.
Right. Okay. Well, now you corrected me because I thought it might have been over towards the east. Okay. So Central Europe. Now you've been
That's what.
teaching yoga for what, 10 years or so, but it's not what you primarily do anymore, is it?
Well, I run yoga retreats, but I'm combining the healing work with the yoga. So I taught yoga full time for 10 years, and now I'm focusing. Yeah, I'm focusing on the therapy, on the
Yeah,
healing.
right. Now you're doing reference point therapy. Have you done other healing modalities in the past?
Yeah, I studied Reiki and I studied bioenergy healing with a guy called Zdenko Domancic, who's very famous over in this part of the world. Um, and of course yoga, which I suppose is
Mm.
in many ways a healing thing. But I never really felt that anything worked properly the way I felt it should do,
Mm-hmm.
until I found reference point therapy.
So when you say nothing worked properly the way you felt it should do, what do you mean should? Like,
Well, I mean,
what was your expectation of how healing should work?
okay, well, I think one of the things that brought me to healing, one of the things that really made me want to be a healer, because, when I was a kid, that was not on my list of things that I wanted to do, along with astronaut and hero. um, I think the thing that really brought me to healing was my dad got really sick. I was very close to my dad, and he got this disease, which is kind of incurable, so-called incurable. And I had this feeling deep down that it must be possible to cure anything. I've just always believed that. And it's based on a kind of a common sense idea that if something has a cause, and you can find that cause, then you can fix the problem. Basic problem solving, common sense. So I was here in Slovenia, and my wife had worked for this guy that I mentioned before, the bioenergy healer.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that he was very good. And I'd also heard about another guy. So I invited my dad over, and I said, look, you don't have any choice. Let's try some alternative healing techniques. I've heard they're very good. So we kind of trawled around. We met lots of different people who, took his money and basically did nothing for him. One of them made him feel much better. He actually thought he'd been cured for about a week. But then the problem came straight back again. And I was really disappointed. Because I thought, I like these people that I was meeting, these healers. I think that they were sincere. I don't think they were trying to fool anyone. I just felt that what they were doing was not efficient. It didn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it works for some of the people some of the time, but it obviously didn't work. We actually met 4 different healers, and none of them really helped my dad properly. And I think they can help some of the people some of the time, but really, if we're really honest, most alternative healing techniques are pretty random. The results are fairly random.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that a placebo
It's random.
is very random, and the percentage of the success rate of a placebo is probably about 30%. There's a lot of tests have been done. And in my opinion, most alternative healing methods are maybe something like that, just not effective enough. Because if I'm sick and I go to someone and I give them my money, I want some guarantee that there's a good chance this is going to work. I don't want to feel like probably this won't work, if we're really honest, you know. And even more so, if I'm working with people daily, clients, and I'm trying to help them, I don't want to know in the back of my mind that probably most of these people are not going to get anything. I'm going to take their money, and they're not going to get any results, you know.
So how did that lead you to reference point therapy then? Did your dad go back home to England, or?
No, actually, that was kind of the thing that prompted me towards healing a little bit. I was then studying with a spiritual teacher called Tony Samara, who's an amazing guy. I could explain about him all day, but he's a complicated guy. But basically, he's a shaman. And I did a few seminars with him, and in one of the seminars, he guided people through meditation, and I had a series of visions. And in one of these visions, I saw him coming towards me with some kind of crystal in his hands, and he put it on my belly. I was lying on my back. He put it on my belly, and my body absorbed it, and it started kind of pulsating. And an old injury that I'd had was kind of triggered by this and then healed. And it's a long story, but basically after this vision, after this meditation, I went to Tony and I said to him, you know, what's this all about? Can you explain this to me a little bit? Because it was really a mind-blowing series of visions. And he said, well, this crystal thing is really interesting because that's an old shamanic initiation ceremony, putting the crystal on the belly of the initiate. And after this experience, I started feeling like I really want to know more about shamanism and about healing. I've been teaching yoga for a long time, and I was a little bit disillusioned with the way that I was unable to really help people transform, because most of the people that were coming to my yoga classes were coming because they had a bad back or they wanted to relax a little bit. Just kind of nice reasons to come to a yoga class, but not the reasons that I was teaching people. I wanted to teach people sort of deep elements, you know. So I started investigating healing, and a long story short, a series of coincidences happened, which were fairly mind-blowing in themselves, which led me to reference point therapy. And just as I found it, Simon, the guy who had created it, was turning up in Slovenia a month later, which is a country sort of off the map almost, and he just happened to be coming here a month later. So I booked onto the courses and I did them, and it blew my mind, you know, because it's healing that works, you know, most of the time, really most of the time. Like 90% of my clients get the results that they want, which is amazing, you know.
So how long have you been working with this healing modality then?
I've been working as a reference point therapist since 2009, so coming up to 3 years now.
How many clients do you think you've seen in 3 years, off the top of your head?
Probably coming up to about 1,000.
Okay. And so you're saying a 90% success rate in terms of them receiving the healing that they want?
Yeah.
And so what makes this particular therapy different from all of the rest? Because I mean, what you're claiming there is a massive success rate. 90% of 1,000 people over 3 years is sort of a fairly consistent track record to be claiming.
So let me explain how it works, why it's different from all the other things, and actually how it works. Most alternative healing methods, and I don't want to sound like I'm slating them, because a lot of them are very good and they help people, so that's wonderful, you know. But most alternative healing methods focus on the heart, emotional healing. And some are also sort of psychology-based and so on, or energy-based, or body work, you know. The problem is that the cause of almost all of our problems is not in the heart, it's not emotional, it's not in the head, it's not psychological, it's not in the body, it's not physical, and it's not about energy, you know.
So what's left?
What's that?
What's left then if it's not about all those things?
Trauma.
So
trauma. Almost all our problems, maybe all our problems. And reference point therapy was based originally very much on a body of work called Peak States of Consciousness, which is a group of scientists and researchers who were investigating trauma, basically, and how trauma affects us in terms of our ability to attain peak states of consciousness or enlightenment states. And their theory was that without any trauma, we would be enlightened, which is a very interesting theory.
Just holding you for 1 second. When you talked about all those places where the healing needs to take place and it's not happening, and then you said it's in trauma, but you said not the physical, not the emotional, not the... Where does trauma reside then? If it's not in the physical, not in the energetic, not even said energetic. Where is it? What's left?
It's not in the head.
Yeah.
It's not in the heart. It's not in the energy, sort of whatever that is, you know. Nobody really agrees on that anyway. It's basically in the gut. It's in the gut.
In the gut. But isn't the gut the body?
So let me explain. There's another theory, it's a scientific theory, which, again, reference point therapy was kind of based on. It's called the Triune brain theory. And I'll try and explain it really succinctly.
So say that word again, the triune brain?
Triune. And I'll send this to you later so you can maybe put a subtitle if you want.
Cool.
Triune as in 3, like a trilogy or something like that. Triune brain theory, it's just a theory, it's just a model, so it's kind of hypothetical, you know, but it works for the healing, so we use it. It basically says that we have evolved over millions of years from reptiles, fish or lizards or something, you know. Came out of the sea as fish or lizards, and we evolved into mammals, and then we became human beings. And the Triune brain theory says that you can sort of map that process of evolution by looking at our brain, and you can see the journey that we've been on. Because down here at the base of our skull, the back of our brain, there's a little piece of brain which is known as the R complex, or the reptilian brain. You take that brain out of your head and you look at it and you compare it to the brain of a lizard. Pretty much the same, it's very similar, you know, and it has the same functions. If you take out the middle part of your brain, which is known as the mammalian brain, the mammal brain, and you compare it to the brain of a monkey or a dog, very similar, same functions. But if you take out this frontal part, it's called the frontal cortex or the neocortex, it's pretty much unique to human beings, okay? Now, these 3 parts of our brain correspond to different parts of our body.
Is this the different optical nerves that fire into them?
Maybe, I'm not sure about that, but what I know is that we have different kinds of awareness. Most people think they have one body and one mind, and their mind is in their head. But we don't really have one mind, we have multiple minds. And if you think about it, mind means center of awareness.
Right.
Different centers of awareness. We have a center of awareness in our head, which is about thinking, basically. We have a center of awareness in our heart, which is about emotion. Because you're not aware of emotion in your head. You know, if you feel something emotional, it affects you here in the heart. And we have a awareness in our gut, which is to do with survival and safety.
Right.
And also reproduction. So the gut, the belly, relates to this little part of the brain, the lizard brain, the R complex. The heart corresponds with the middle part of our brain, the mammalian brain. And this frontal cortex brain corresponds with our awareness of thinking, thought, logic, analysis, and this kind of thing. Okay. Now, what RPT does is it heals things on the level of the gut. And the reason this is so important, the reason this is the key to real healing, is that our problems are not caused by our emotions. And they're not caused by our thoughts or our logic or our analysis or our judgment, you know, the head. That is not where our problems start. Our problems start with our kind of relationship with safety and survival and reproduction. In other words, trauma. The definition of trauma is a threat. Whenever you think that you're not safe, that's trauma.
So that's when the fight or flight sort of kicks
Fight.
in, right?
Right. So fight or flight are survival instincts. And there are really 3 survival instincts. The 3 survival instincts are fight, flight, freeze.
Right.
And just to really simplify it, freeze what you do when you can't get away and you can't fight back. You freeze. Yeah. If you're in a dangerous situation, you'll almost always try to fight or run away if you can, and if you can't, you'll just freeze because there's really nothing else to do. Right? Now, what has happened to us as human beings is that in the process of our evolution, and I think it's when we developed the neocortex, when we became really intelligent and our egos developed, we lost the ability to process and complete trauma. So what has happened is we've held on to the instincts that kept us safe in trauma. What that means is that we still subconsciously associate fighting or running away or freezing, and each of those has sort of variations. We still associate those things with our safety, and safety is the defining theme of our evolution. It's the basic it's the baseline of us as human beings. If we don't feel safe, we forget about everything else. You know, if you're safe, you forget that you're hungry. If you're not safe, you forget that you want to buy a new computer. Everything else is completely out the window. If you're not safe, that becomes an absolute priority. So if you subconsciously feel that you need to freeze in order to be safe, you'll freeze all the time. And if you think about it, you know, I know that if 100 people are watching this, 50 of them at least are going to resonate with that. They're going to think, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of stuck, trapped, frozen. I feel numb inside. I'm not able to open my heart and be emotional and share my emotions. I'm not able to share intimacy with people. These are all variations of freezing.
So what you're saying is we're relating to life as if we're in trauma all the time, even though we're not necessarily in trauma. And in that relating, we're tending to either fight or flee or freeze.
Yeah, not all the time. I think what really happens is that in certain situations which remind us of trauma, we react in the way that we survived that original trauma, or in the way that our body helped us to feel safe. Our gut helped us to feel safe in that original trauma. Let me give you an example to sort of make it clear. So this is a real life example. I had a client who came to me, a woman, who had real problems with intimacy, not just sexual intimacy, but also, and perhaps primarily, sexual intimacy. Anytime that she started getting really close to somebody, she froze. She just kind of locked up. She just could not, and it was deeply uncomfortable for her. She would end relationships as soon as they started getting intimate. She just basically couldn't do it, you know. So I worked with her, and this memory came up of the time when she was in kindergarten. And she'd been in the kindergarten. She'd been lying on the floor under a blanket. It was the time for the break where all the kids have a nap. So all the kids were sleeping, and she'd woken up feeling this kind of energy in her body, like a sexual energy. It was probably the first time that she'd experienced it as a child, you know. And she was fascinated, so she started sort of playing with it. And she pulled her pants down, and she was lying on her tummy and just sort of rolling around on her hands, you know. And a teacher kind of appeared out of the blue and just whipped the blanket off her, revealing her, and started shouting at her. And all the other kids woke up, and the other teachers looked over, and, you know, she was completely humiliated, completely ashamed, punished in front of the whole class. I think she was like 4, 5, 6 years old, something like that. And, you know, all that had been happening, it's just really, really bloody simple. All that had been happening is that since that moment, sexual energy, or that kind of intimate, almost mythical energy that you feel in the body that starts happening whenever you get really intimate, either with yourself or with someone else, was triggering the subconscious association between safety and freezing. So she was getting into an intimate situation and freezing, because that part of her brain, which is actually the oldest part of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain, which has been there for hundreds of millions of years, is very, very powerful. And we're programmed to listen to that. And as soon as that part of our brain says, you're not safe, you need to freeze, we drop everything and we freeze. On all levels, we stop thinking, we stop feeling emotional, we just freeze. Because deep down, we think, I've got to do this to survive or to be safe. Mm-hmm. And that's why this is so important, is because we have to understand that so much of our lives focus on positive thinking, how we think, changing our beliefs,
Yeah.
feeling emotions, changing how we feel, focusing on positive emotions, changing that aspect of our lives. And it doesn't work. It doesn't really work. It might work a little bit, or it might work in the long term slowly, but it's very frustrating, you know.
Okay.
If you've got lots of trauma which is triggering you in certain areas and you're just reacting to that trauma, in those moments, all of your positive thinking, all of your nice emotions that you've been trying to cultivate, they're out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And when you heal the trauma, you don't have to change how you feel because you go back to how you're meant to be. And we're meant to be free from trauma because all animals in the wild complete trauma. They experience trauma and then they just let go of those associations between safety and the instinct. When our egos develop, we lost that ability.
So when you're talking about healing and having a 90% success rate over 3 years, we'll say approximately 1,000 clients, you're not necessarily talking about someone who's broke their leg 3 weeks ago and is wanting you to heal that broken leg. That's not the kind of healing that you're talking about, are you?
Well, that's obviously a physical healing, and I've had, you know, I don't know what percentage of my clients are for physical healings, but the minority. So most people come to me for sort of emotional healing or psychological or spiritual healing.
Right.
But having said that, I've had some amazing physical healings because the body is really just an aspect of our consciousness. The way I look at it is that all we are as human beings is consciousness. And consciousness can be, for me, is interchangeable with a bunch of other words like love or God or sort of universal energy, the energy of creation. I believe that all there is in the universe is consciousness, and that everything or being in the universe is just an aspect or an expression of that universal consciousness, which some people call God, okay? The body is just an expression of the consciousness that we embody, that we are. It also has an emotional expression, it also has a mental expression, also expresses itself in various ways, you know. But the body is just an aspect of our consciousness, and trauma affects us on a deep subconscious level. When you heal it, it changes all of the aspects, all of those expressions. So when you heal a trauma, it changes your body, it changes your emotions, changes your thoughts. It basically transforms all of you.
So what about people suffering from quite serious diseases or things like cancer or AIDS or terminal illness, etc.? Is that necessarily being caused by trauma back in the day, or is this because of other factors? I mean...
Okay, well, another science which very much influenced RPT is called epigenetics. In epigenetics, scientists have almost conclusively proven that there's a link between ancestral trauma, you know, stuff that happened to your grandma, for example, and your own physical problems. If you think about that, that's amazing.
So
they've shown
cancer
that
or something, though. I mean,
say that again.
So if you're getting cancer at say age 38 or 39, that could be related to trauma that your grandparents experienced.
I can't say for sure that cancer is an example of that. Let me finish what I'm saying. What I can say for sure is that scientists have seen that there's a direct link, for example, between famine or starvation or hunger experienced by the grandmother when she was pregnant with your mother and diabetes in you, the grandchild, right? Direct link between hunger in the grandmother, diabetes in the grandchild. It's amazing if you think about it. You know, how is it possible that she didn't have enough to eat and that her grandkid has a disease? It's almost mind blowing, and I can explain it.
It could take a while, though.
No, it's very quick. At that time when she was pregnant with your mother, the eggs which your mother had throughout life were created. So not many people know this. This is like a biological fact.
Okay. So when you're in utero, you've actually got the eggs that you're going to have that will create your children.
Yeah, exactly. Every woman, when she's born, she has all the eggs that she'll ever have. Okay. So when your mother was in your grandmother's womb, the eggs were being created. In other words, the cells of your mother's body were being created, including the eggs. And the trauma that your grandmother experienced is stored in those cells, including the egg, which then creates your body. So it's not just your mother that gets that information, but it's also you through the egg, which creates your physiology together with the sperm from your father. So the egg creates your body, and your body still has that information of trauma. Really, just what it means is that you have a predisposition to similar kinds of trauma.
Okay. So I read one of the articles that you posted on Elephant Journal about 6 months ago, looking at a woman who had had depression and issues with her thyroid and was heading in for surgery. She did one session with you. 18 months later, you saw her, and she was just stoked, really ecstatic and happy, and she didn't end up having her surgery. She wasn't suffering from depression anymore, and she was really happy. So you wrote about it. This was a client of yours, right?
Yeah, one of my first clients.
Yeah. You wrote about it, and you're obviously quite enthusiastic and excited, and it generated a lot. There's 125 comments on that article now, with people going back and forth, and you annoyed quite a few people with that article. Were you surprised that people took offence the way that they did?
I actually was really, really surprised, and I was quite hurt actually by what happened. I'm over it now. It was a good lesson for me, but yeah, I was surprised. Yeah.
So why did it trigger so many people? Why were so many people so annoyed?
Well, I think one of the reasons, which I take responsibility for completely, was the use of the word miraculous in the title. I think the title was something like "Miraculous Healing of Thyroid Problem." I can't remember, but the word miraculous was in there, and obviously I didn't mean it like Jesus did miracles, I wasn't saying I can walk on water or something. I was just saying I was using it in a, what's the word, hyperbolic sense, in a kind of a...
Hyperbole, yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of the word, but I just meant, to me, this is miraculous. This is sort of almost magical and amazing. And it still is to me, in that sense, I stand by it. I think it's beautiful that somebody can come for one session, and not only their depression is cleared, but also a physical thing at the same time. And 18 months later, you get the confirmation that since that time, 18 months ago, she hasn't had any problem with her thyroid, and she had regular checkups,
So she'd been and had medical checkups. Were her doctors amazed, or were they like, come on, we had you scheduled for surgery, what's going on?
I imagine they're fairly amazed. I had another client who had exactly the same thing with a cyst on her ovary, and the doctor was amazed, and actually the doctor made her go back for more tests because he couldn't believe that it had gone. He thought maybe the test is just not showing it properly, so... but I don't know about this woman, the thyroid lady's doctor, because she didn't tell me if they were amazed or not.
So are you collecting evidence of these clients? Because, I mean, this is game changing. This could, if this is happening as it's, as you say it's happening, and this is a particular therapy, reference point therapy, and it has this capability of healing people completely, like this, with what, 1 or 2 sessions sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So are you actually starting to collect evidence, or are there any scientific studies being done on this, or because this hasn't been around very long, this particular therapy, has it?
No, it was created 3 years ago basically, so it's not been around very long, and at the moment there's a group of about 30 teachers, and we have meetings every month, and we've been discussing for about 4 or 5 months now exactly what you just asked. We're beginning now to create a system of collecting and documenting the clients and the results in a kind of simple way that we can show. So up until now, that hasn't been done, unfortunately, but it should be done fairly soon in the future. There's a few big changes happening in the organization and the structure of RPT, which I think are going to help that along. Mm-hmm. And another thing, sort of to answer your question, is that apparently, I'm not sure to what extent this has progressed, but recently there's been an approach by a pharmaceutical company, some kind of organic pharmaceutical company, to Simon, who created RPT and runs RPT. And they want to do drug trials with RPT at the same time. So this is pretty huge,
But if RPT works, why would you need to do it in conjunction with drugs?
To show that it works. To show that basically, if they're giving the drugs to people, it might help, say, 20% of the people. If they're giving the drugs to the people and they're doing RPT and 90% of the people are healed, then the difference is RPT, obviously. It's gonna help the drugs company and it's gonna help RPT, and hopefully it's a way of showing the world. To answer your question, it's really, really difficult to do trials like this. It's really, really difficult to demonstrate scientifically and conclusively, in a way that the scientific community will accept, that an alternative, just simply talk-based therapy really works, Because first of all, most people don't want to believe that in the scientific community, because they've got a lot invested in their beliefs, and it's very well known that people don't want to change what they believe. And secondly, it costs a huge amount of money to do this kind of thing. It takes a period of time, and you have to pay people. We have approached people who work in this field, and they say it costs like $1 million or something like that. And the other thing is, we've all been busy healing people and perfecting this technique, teaching people how to do it, and perfecting the technique. So, yeah, but it is moving in that direction. It is, and I think it will be game changing. I mean, it is game changing already. And a lot of people who already work in the fields of psychology and healing, and even medical professionals, are beginning to come and study RPT so that they can help as well.
So another one of your articles that also looked at healing, you talked about 3 things that need to happen in order for healing to take place.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that these 3 things that need to happen also need to be happening when someone's having reference point therapy. So what were these 3 things?
I think you're talking about, I'm sure you're talking about, the first thing is taking responsibility for the problem. A lot of people want to be fixed by somebody else. So, and we have been educated and conditioned this way. Something's wrong, go to the doctor. And you sit there and you look up at the doctor, and he gives you a pill, or he prescribes you something, or you go for an operation, and you totally put the responsibility and your own power to change things in those people's hands.
But isn't that what you're asking clients to do with you as a healer? So reference point therapy, come to me and I will heal you?
No, not at all, because with reference point therapy, I'm actually not doing anything to anybody. I'm just talking with them. I'm just talking with my clients, and I'm guiding them to the awareness of the deeper subconscious issues which are causing their emotional, physical, whatever problems, So it's absolutely the opposite of taking somebody's power and taking responsibility for them. I'm making that person responsible, and I'm empowering them. And, to me, that's the difference between healing that actually works, apart from the fact that it's focused on trauma. That's the difference between healing that really works and healing that doesn't, because healing has to come from within. And it does come from within. If you cut yourself, the body has really a miraculous, I don't mind using the word miraculous now, because if you actually look, if you were to film your wound and you were to do it in fast forward so you see the thing, it's just amazing. It's like watching a flower bloom, when they have those nature programs and you see the flowers opening and closing as days and nights go by very quickly. It's miraculous, and there's actually no way of explaining it. It is miraculous. Life and creation, consciousness is miraculous. So
what does someone taking responsibility for their health look like? How does someone know if they're taking responsibility?
If someone's taking responsibility, it's a great question, and it's a really difficult one to answer, because there's no kind of set recipe for taking responsibility. Basically, you have to stop holding on to your problems. And most of us hold on to our problems for a good while before we decide, okay, I've had enough of this, You have to stop holding on to your problems, because usually our problems give us something. A good example is somebody who has a bad back. They don't have to go to work. They might not like the job. I had a client who had really bad headaches. She was holding on to those headaches, and she wasn't going to heal them until I helped her realize that the benefit of the headaches was that she didn't have to sleep with her husband anymore. As long as she had a great reason not to sleep with her husband, She had to make a choice. Do I want to lose the headaches and stop and tell my husband, be honest with him and be honest with myself? So the first thing is we have to let go of whatever is causing us to hold on to the problem. we also have to stop blaming other people for those problems. So often something happened to us in the past, and we might know subconsciously that trauma or that stuff that happened perhaps by our parents in the past is the reason for our anger, the reason for our depression, whatever. But we're so busy blaming the past and blaming those people in the past that we're not taking responsibility for the present. And the problem is in the present. And the solution to the problem, the healing, is in the present. It's not in the past. Yeah, those people might have done that to us in the past, but we have to let go of that if we want to be present and if we want to allow ourselves to transform the problem. So it's about letting go of the past. It's about letting go of whatever we're holding on to. And it's really about accepting that we're very powerful, that we have the power to heal ourselves and to change all these things. So it's a great question. It's difficult to explain.
Okay. I think it makes sense to me though. So if someone comes to you and you can tell that they haven't yet taken responsibility for whatever issue they're presenting to you, whether it's a bad back or whatever, what do you say to them?
I treat that problem first. So let's say somebody comes to me with depression and I know that they're not taking responsibility. One of the ways I know that someone's not taking responsibility is that they've got this look in their eye and tone of voice which is basically saying, please fix me. I don't want to know the cause of the problem necessarily, I just want you to fix me. Anyway, what do? Is I work on why the person is not taking responsibility, and I help them come to the place of responsibility. I bring them to that point of responsibility. And sometimes people choose not to, but 9 times out of 10, they say, yeah, I do want to take responsibility for this now. And they let go of the blame, they let go of the anger, they let go of those benefits that the problem was giving you, So in a way, that's one of the skills that is quite tricky to master doing this work, I think. It's really recognizing where someone is at and helping them to get to the point where they need to be to achieve what they want to achieve. Mm-hmm. It's really, to me, it's just all about guiding people.
So when you talk about it, you said you used the word facilitation. So the implication there is that could somebody use reference point therapy on themselves if they had enough awareness and they knew the process?
Yeah, it is a self-healing technique. There are 3 levels of reference point therapy. The first level is basically learning the technique so that you can apply it to yourself, and maybe you could also help your friends and your family a little bit. The second technique is a slightly more advanced technique, which then enables you to work as a professional so that you can do this as a therapist.
So in essence, you don't have to rely on a healer to do something to you. Like you're not imbued with special powers that turn you into a healer per se.
No, you're not. I don't have special powers, unfortunately, or fortunately, I think actually. But it is a self-healing technique. But self-healing is much harder than doing it with the help of someone else, because don't forget, you're looking for subconscious stuff. You're looking for those blockages which are in the subconscious, and it is harder to find your own subconscious stuff. It's not impossible. It's definitely possible, but it's just a little bit harder. It takes a bit more discipline, a bit more concentration. So all of us reference point, basically when you do RPT, you work with a partner. On the course, you sort of rotate with people and then you keep in touch with them and you do swaps. So it's great.
Have you read The Journey by Brandon Bays?
The Journey by who?
Brandon Bays.
No.
Just curious, because I've watched a couple of the videos on reference point therapy, and to me it looks quite similar, just from the little bit I've seen.
Parallel, just stop you for a second. There's a red light flashing on the screen.
I can't see it on my side.
Oh no, maybe, sorry, it's probably just telling me that we're recording. It's probably been there all the time and I didn't notice it, so no.
Brandon Bays wrote a book called The Journey, and when I looked at reference point therapy, there's a video up there of him sort of going through the process, and it reminded me of that. So I was just curious as to whether or not you were familiar with her work. As you're not, let's not waste time talking about it. Maybe go and read her book, because it does that similar thing where you work with each other, you partner up, you go through a process, and it's about getting to the root cause of what,
Is
yeah.
is the root cause of that trauma?
It might only go down to the emotional level. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Most techniques go to the emotional level. If you think about it, most of our problems we recognize when when the symptoms manifest on the emotional level. You know, if we're sad or angry or depressed or rageful or whatever the thing is, that's when we think, I've got a problem, you know. But it comes from a deeper place. It comes from it comes from trauma.
Okay. So one final question: to the people that have been quite annoyed or triggered, or who have criticised you quite strongly, actually, in that article.
Yeah.
What would you like them to understand? What did you learn from that exchange? Because it really turned into a bit of an us and them, didn't it? Or a yes no. And it's interesting on a yoga blog that to me, I find it really interesting that the dialogue itself seems to keep going back and forth in this duality, and there's an inability to somehow to even transition the dialogue itself.
Well, look, I really understand where those people are coming from, because I also hate and detest are really strong words, but that's pretty close to how I feel sometimes about the new age alternative healing world of spiritual teachers. And, there's so much bullshit. And, I really can't stand it. It drives me crazy when I see spiritual teachers taking advantage of people who come to them because they have problems, taking their power and duping people into thinking that this spiritual teacher has answers, when very often those people have just as many problems as everyone else, So, look, I really understand why those people were triggered. There I was saying, hey, this is miraculous. Come and look, this is wonderful. But I think that you also have to keep believing in humanity. You have to keep trusting yourself, and you have to keep believing that it is possible, that life is very simple, and that it doesn't have to be so complex. And that was really all I was trying to say. That's all I'm trying to say with my work, is that this is something I've always believed. Life is meant to be good. Because the beginning of my life was pretty crappy. I struggled for almost 30 years with all kinds of demons and abuse and stuff. But deep down, I always believed, it's not meant to be like this. I had hope and trust in myself that I could extract myself out of that. There must be some way of doing that, And that's what I'm trying to communicate with the writing, with the videos. It can be simple. It doesn't have to be such hard work. We're not meant to be here to struggle for most of our lives with this kind of dream, which is never really achieved, Just happens. Most people want to be happy, and most people are struggling for that, trying this thing and that thing, and it's always out of reach, And really, all I was saying in that article is, look, this is amazing. This is really amazing, and I'm enthusiastic about it, and I'm sincere. And I understand why people couldn't recognize that sincerity, because we're so conditioned to believe that people are trying to sell us something, and that there's some ulterior motive. And there isn't any ulterior motive behind my writing. Yeah, I want to get clients because that's my work, but I'm not actually motivated by money. I'm motivated by the fact that I love what I do, So I understand why people couldn't see that. And I also realized that I was perhaps as a writer, I have responsibility to not use too much hyperbole. Perhaps it was a little bit too advertorial sounding, that article. I don't know. But I understand how they feel. I don't think there's anything I can really say that will change their opinions, because I tried to do that in the comments below the article and they weren't having any of it. So in the end, I gave up. At the end of the day, people will believe what they want to believe, and you can't change people unless they want to change. So,
well, thank you, Ben, for taking the time to talk to us today, and just for being so upfront and sharing all of that information quite freely. So,
it's a real pleasure. Thank you for asking me.